I want to talk about neutrality today because I feel like it's a concept I personally like teach and preach about often. And I also feel like it's one that is like very misunderstood. Um, and I think we just need to talk about that a little bit more in terms of like, what do we actually mean when we're talking about neutrality? What does that really look like? Because I feel like it is honestly keeping so many people stuck because they think it's supposed to look a certain way in their business. And so they're trying for it to look that way. And then when it doesn't, they're making themselves wrong. So we're going to dive into that. Crystal, I'm here. I was trying. Shannon said your Taylor joy was so contagious it made me cry. Oh, thank you, Shannon. It honestly was so joyful. I said to Sarah the next morning, I was like, that was a top 3 moment of my entire life. And she was like, what the fuck are your other two? That was number 1. Like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I don't know, maybe the birth of my child, but like, really, it was up there. It was so good. Highly, highly joyful. Hi, Heather. Okay. So let's chat neutrality. I have a lot of examples I want to bring as well. You guys know the drill. If you are here and you comment, you are entered to win. What are we entered to win today? I'm telling you guys, I was not firing on all cylinders before I got on here. Let's find out. Any of my products. So basically, like if you comment, you are entered to win any product. You can just pick whichever one you want. Okay, neutrality. So I feel like when we talk about neutrality, we're always saying you got to get neutral to make good decisions in your business. Agree with that fully. Stand by that 1000%. If you are making reactive, emotional decisions in your business, it is very, very hard to, one, be strategic, but two, grow your business in the way you want to. Like, we cannot be in that place of like, I'm reacting to this thing that happened. And so I'm making this move from that place, thinking that that will actually grow our business in the way that we are intending to, hoping to, whatever. However, this is the misunderstanding that I think is so huge in our space. And I think what gets everyone so stuck is that does not mean you always feel neutral about your business. That doesn't mean you don't have big feelings around your business. That doesn't mean shit doesn't happen or trigger you or upset you or feel frustrating or like insert literally any fucking emotion on the spectrum, right? And so what I see a lot of entrepreneurs doing is they're like, well, I need to be neutral to like be a great CEO and really grow things. And so then they're trying to like only do shit that they feel neutral about. Or if they're having stuff happen in their business that they can't find neutral about, they're making that wrong. Then they're like, see, I should be feeling neutral and I'm not. Something is wrong in my business. I need to change my business. That is not the point. That is not even close to the point. So I want to give some like really specific examples because I think it's helpful to talk through this. But like, here's one. One of my clients has been going viral like a ton recently and getting some crazy ass comments, to say the least. And hey, Deborah, and what I was saying to her is like, the point isn't that you feel neutral about those comments. Like, no one can be like, you're a dumb asshole. Very close to a real comment, I think. And you go, that I feel nothing about that. Of course, you're going to be like, even if I don't care what you have to think, that feels really kind of like intense and violating and like just weird, right? Like if you're out in public and someone like comes up to you and says that, like, are you really going to expect yourself to have absolutely zero feeling, zero reaction? No. The point though, is that we just don't make business moves and decisions from that place. So when you read that comment, you're like, whoa, I feel a type of way about that. You process that. You name that. You let yourself have that. You have your moment and you get to neutral about it before you decide what you need to do about it. And that's the difference. It's not don't have emotion in your business, don't have feeling, or be at a place in your business where nothing touches you. It's things are going to touch you. If you're not doing the I'm a robot going through life trying to completely compartmentalize and not feel my emotions, guess what? You're going to have emotions. Anyone, I think, in this space that's telling you that you should get to a point in your business where you do not have negative feels occasionally is selling you snake oil, just to be clear. But both can live together. You can be a feeling human who has feelings come up when someone like writes something shitty to you. And you can still be a really strategic CEO who does not let that make her stop posting, make moves based on that, tailor all of her content to not hear that happen or not have that happen again. And I think that's the difference. So when we're talking about neutrality, what most people assume it is, right, is these things should be happening in my business and I should not care. Like I should get all these social comments and it doesn't matter. Again, no, it should be like, I get all these social comments. I have a place and space and process for naming that, for feeling that, for letting myself go there. And then I can handle it as a CEO. They're just different things, right? But if you're trying to build a like net neutral business in terms of feelings, you're building a business where you're playing small. You're building a business where you're trying to never go viral. You're building a business where you're trying to never be in touch with a client enough that they could possibly say something that you wouldn't like or whatever. Like you're really trying to build a business that has all of these walls around it so you don't have to feel a thing. And that is the worst thing you could do if you're really trying to grow, if you're really trying to scale. If you're trying to get like, so many people will come to me and be like, okay, I really, really want to get like a ton more reach. And I'm like, okay, amazing. Do you feel ready to handle what that entails? And they're like, oh, no, no. Let me clarify, Lace. I want to get a ton of reach, but I'm like not trying to say anything controversial that would get anyone to leave me any negative comments. Like that's not what I'm trying to do. That's unfortunately not the climate. It's not how it works. Do I wish it worked that way? Of course. Like, I don't particularly like some, old white man commenting on my shit about crazy things that he does not know about, but like, it is what it is, right? So I think that this is the point I want to make. It's not that you don't have to feel any way about that. Like, I feel a way, right? But I'm not going to build a lit up life to make sure those comments don't show up, right? I will give other examples, but I hope that's like a helpful one because I think the social one's very triggering for a lot of us. Ray said, really appreciate this example. Thank you. Deborah said, so true. Hey, Sarah. Yes, yes. And I think this is where people kind of like get you online when I was saying that anyone telling you that you should never feel anything about your business is selling snake oil is because we're having these big feelings. We're like, oh my God, someone left this comment and like, bleh. And like, I feel so much about that. And then someone is marketing to us going, hey, if you're feeling all of these emotions in your business, it's because you're running it wrong. It's because you're doing it wrong. I got you. Let me help you figure that out. Of course, you're going to buy that. Of fucking course, right? Who would not, from our like lizard brain, want that? I want that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I am a very deeply feeling person. Like, sometimes it would be really nice to turn that off, but like that's not what we're doing here. That's not the human experience, nor is that healthy or going to lead me to like the level of happiness in life that I want, right? If you're going to have the level of joy, you got to be willing to have like the level of challenge sometimes too. Like that's how it goes. It's like that Osho quote, right? Of like the roots and the branches need each other. So anyway, another example that I think comes up a lot for people in a scenario like this is like something with like client challenges or like client non-payment or something like that. So it's like what a lot of people will do is they'll be really reactive to that. So like say a client owed you a lot of money and hasn't paid it. What you can do in a situation like that, I think, is get really reactive. Like I've had a lot of people be like, well, I only take painfuls because one time someone didn't pay and that was like horrible and I'll never deal with that again. But like, I'm not getting as many clients as I want. And I'm like, right? Because something bad happened, it made you feel really violated or really bad and in whatever way, which is totally fucking fair when a client doesn't pay. But instead of like being able to process the feelings around that, address that, whatever, you decide, well, I'm never going to feel this way again. That's the only possible way I can be at neutral. And so now I'm going to limit myself to only clients that will pay in full. Instead of, I process this feeling, I know it's a big feeling, and I know I can handle it again. And I know occasionally in business, these things are going to happen and there are going to be client challenges and there is going to be non-payment. And I'm allowed to feel however I want to feel about them every time. I'm just not going to run my whole business as a reaction to those things, right? Sarah said I had big anxious feelings earlier this year and I needed it in order to solve a problem in my business. My self-esteem skyrocketed after that. I think that is so true, right? I love that you said that. So let's use this example. Someone doesn't pay, you handle it. I mean, we have our resident lawyer here. Like, you contact your attorney, you send a letter, you show them the contract, like you do all the things. And that's actually what builds your confidence, is like, that wasn't the most fun and that definitely didn't feel like the best thing, but I know how to handle it. I know I'll show up for it. And I know I got this. And I know if that feeling comes up again in my business, I can process through it. Is it like the thing I want most? Of course not. Can I handle it? Yes. It reminds me of like when I got a divorce and then was like thinking of marrying Kenny again. I was like, I only want to marry Kenny if I'm like, I know this sounds a little fucked up, but hear me out. It's like, I only want to marry Kenny again if I'm not like, I could never have two divorces. The worst thing that could ever happen in my whole life ever is if I got divorced twice, right? Not because I want to get divorced. In fact, I like try to really operate on the idea that that's like not the go-to. But I never want to be so reactionary to something that I don't feel like I could handle it. Like, it's not like, oh, I handled it once, I could never, ever, ever, ever handle it again. It's like, I handled it once. And if it really came down to that, I would always have my own back. I would always show up for myself. I'll always protect myself. Right. And I think that we need that in business when we're like, I handled that once and I can never, ever, ever deal with that again. And so I will build every wall and make every process so I never have to deal with it again. That's when we're not at neutral. That's not neutrality, right? That's not, I'm a CEO who can handle this. This is like, I'm a CEO who will change her business at the drop of a hat if something happens that I don't really like. Another example that comes up for me a lot with this is like, if you got bad feedback from a client or customer, again, I think that can be one of the hardest things as a business owner. It can feel so difficult because like maybe it's really justified, maybe it's not, but either way, I think it can be incredibly hard. And so I feel like then what so many people do is like put these walls up. How do I have more space between me and my clients? How do I not have to interact with them in this way? How do I create like a bigger barrier around myself so that like I can't even hear these comments, or like they'll have to go to someone on my team and I won't even like be privy to them. I feel like so many people do this. And it's like, again, what they're really saying is like, I can't handle the feedback. Well, we should not be in business as service providers with clients if we cannot handle feedback. Like, that's for us to handle. It's not to create a business that's like at net zero where you would never have to hear that so you can stay totally neutral about it, right? But our brains don't think about it like that. And I think, again, it's what gets marketed to you all the time is like, you should have a business where you don't have to deal with any of this bullshit. Instead of like, the reality is, if you're a service provider, you should have a business where you can get feedback and you have to handle it. Like, I know that's not the sexy thing. It's not what anybody wants to hear, but at the end of the day, like, that is like real business. And honestly, I think it's a business that's in integrity. I think the snake oil version is like, you should have a business where a client never doesn't pay, you never get negative feedback, you never have to deal with a hard conversation, you never get pushback on social. Like, that's not real. The point is, do you have the space and the place and the permission to actually process that? What I hear so much from clients that have like been in other big programs and come to me is like, the vibe is like, don't bring anything bad, right? And so then they start feeling like, well, bad things are happening in my business. That means something's really wrong with me or my business. That means I'm doing it wrong, right? And I think a lot of times it's because the actual coach or provider doesn't want to have to deal with other people's big emotions. Like, trust me, I have a toddler. I'm dealing with big emotions of someone else all day long. It is taxing. I get it. But like, that is what we need in business. We need someone that's willing to be like, hey, you're allowed to bring all of this. You're allowed to feel feelings around this. You're allowed to have a big reaction to this. And if we process through that, then you can make more neutral decisions from that place. It's not build a business that is at neutral, right? Deborah says, oof, yes, the bad feedback from a client or when a client ghosts, right, on payment as a chargeback wins a dispute. Totally. Ew, that's absolutely snake oil. How can you be in a coaching container but can't bring any of the drama to the container? Like, we need a space to resolve it. Exactly. And I really think that's what's happening in our industry so much is it's like we're not openly going, hey, we can bring all of that here. And so we think everyone else has it easier. Everyone else must not be having these, this feedback or these challenges on social, or it must not feel so triggering to everyone else. When the truth is like, I've never had a client get a shit ton of comments that didn't feel a way about it. I've never had a client that got bad feedback that didn't have a feeling about it. I mean, like, I just can't imagine why we would expect that of ourselves. The point is to get it, process it, make more neutral decisions because you have done the processing, not in spite of it. Another one that I think is so relevant here is like with income too. I think that, I mean, there's like 100 examples of this, but I think that like people feel like they should be like, here's what I'm gonna say. People feel like they should be able to stay at neutral no matter what their income is doing, when really it's like, we actually have to pay attention to that. We have to pay attention to like, do I feel safe and resourced enough in my business? And if not, everything's going to feel triggering, right? I think that that's such a thing where it's like a lot of people are like, oh, okay, well, like you just made a big investment. It's totally cool. Neutrality, abundance, whatever. Instead of like, oh, okay, well, sometimes it's really good to make a stretchy investment in business. And sometimes it's going to completely dysregulate us, and we have to pay attention to that emotion that matters, because if we don't, one, we might just be doing that all the time, but two, we can't run a business from total fight or flight, from total freeze, from total overwhelm, right? And so if you're not able to come and process like, hey, this is a tough income month, or this is a thing. And again, sometimes it's all in our heads. Like, I have a client who had a really hard time about her income one month this year, and she's probably going to make $1 million this year. Okay, like it's not always logical even, but we're still gonna have experiences and feelings if it seems like things went down or things dipped, or we're not able to like support ourselves in the way that we're meant to. And again, I think our industry goes, that's not an abundant mindset. Keep going, get neutral about it. What would future you do? Blah, 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 right? And of course, there's value in all of that. There's value in saying, like, hey, the me down the road, like what kind of decisions she's made. There is value in making investments from like a really neutral standpoint. And if you do not have income that is like consistently there and consistently supporting you, you are going to be in a difficult state in your business. And I think we have to recognize that and acknowledge that, and not just keep going, pretend it's not happening, pretend it's not happening, pretend it's not happening, right? That's a disaster waiting to happen. And if you think you're dysregulated now, pretend it's not happening for months and then watch how dysregulated you get from there, right? And so I think there are all these cases where like, yes, neutrality really matters. Like for the income perspective, it's huge. Like I think that a lot of times we can have personal financial stress and then bring so much of that reactivity to our business, and it harms our business completely. Yes, neutrality is needed. If you're having the stress, you need to process it, handle it, work through it, and then make more neutral business decisions. But again, like the idea that you should be able to skip over that front part, I think is so detrimental in our space. And I think so many people are buying programs, making decisions, making moves in their business, and thinking they're being strategic when really they're just like, I'm supposed to build a business that doesn't give me all these feels, right? And the reality is like any of us that are building these businesses, especially if we're like deeply feeling humans, if we're in touch with our emotions, if we're like growth seeking, etc., there are going to be emotions and feelings behind these things. It's as simple as that, right? Um, And I'm not saying that makes it easy. I think that's one of the very, very difficult parts of running your own business. But I think that if we don't acknowledge that and we're constantly looking for a business that does not create a feeling or activation in us, we are dramatically limiting ourselves and our potential, right? Deborah said, yeah, it's like a house of cards. Totally. Right? Because we're like, oh, okay, well, I only take whatever pay in fulls because I never want to feel this way. Oh, I don't really say anything controversial on social because I don't want to feel this way. Oh, I don't really like work too in depth with clients because like I never really want to go there or feel weird about that. Oh, I really don't. I mean, what is the other thing I said? I don't really ask clients for feedback and surveys or anything like that because like, ooh, that's a lot. Like, think about that business. I can't really market successfully. It's only pay in full. I never really ask for feedback. I never improve. Like your world gets so small with these things, right? Your business gets so limited. And it's so hard to actually trust yourself and actually build belief in yourself from that place too, because the only way you're handling things isn't by like stepping up and into your leadership. It's by going, okay, never that again. Right. And then at a certain point, your business gets so small, it's like you're backed into a corner. You can't make any moves. You're like, well, yeah, but I did that one time and something bad happened. Or, oh, yeah, well, one time I worked with a client like this and like, well, that was bad. Oh, yeah, well, I mean, that again, like, isn't that life to a certain extent? So I just wanted to share that because I really, really, really do think neutrality is like one of the most valuable things we can bring to business decisions, business strategy, right? But it takes so much to get there. And I think that's what we're often missing acknowledgement of. Like, yes, neutrality is the goal, it is the path, it is one of the best things we can give ourselves in business. And there's a lot that has to happen first to get us there. And honestly, it's stretchy to focus on that. Like, I definitely know this with like when I have these conversations with clients of like, hey, I hear that you want to do this. It seems like you're really, really feeling quite stressed and reactive and activated about this. Can we process that first? A lot of times they don't want to process that first. They're like, no, solve the problem, solve the problem, solve the problem, which I totally get. Like, that's what our brains want to do. But I think it's important to say neutrality is here and it's the goal. And all of this is where most of the work lies. When you're at neutral, it's so fucking easy to make good strategic decisions, right? When you're not, it is so difficult and sometimes impossible, right? Because all your brain wants is for this uncomfortable feeling to go away, right? When you've handled the uncomfortable feeling and you're like, oh, yeah, well, it just makes sense to do this. Oh, strategically, that's the only thing that makes sense in my business. Like, it's so fucking easy. That's why it's easier when it's someone else's business, right? Like for me and other people's businesses, I can just see so clearly because I don't have the same level of emotional investment or activation. I mean, it's just that simple, right? When it's our own, it's totally different. I can see a client of mine getting shitty comments and I'm like, oh, that's so dumb. That's so funny. That's not even what she said. Oh my God, you're obviously projecting so much and you're crazy. But if it's you, it's like a different feeling, right? So I just wanted to say all that because I feel like it gets convoluted. Like, yes, neutrality. I think we should keep talking about that. I think that's an important experience and doesn't come without a lot of work. It doesn't come without a lot of processing. It's not for free. It's not based on the type of business model you built or anything like that. And I think most of us don't want to like not have to be humans in our business. Like, yeah, we don't always want to feel the feelings, but like ultimately at the end of the day, like most of us do want to be able to be like full and complete people with experiences in our business. But if you're getting that negative comment and then you're going to a coaching container and they're like, why do you care what anyone thinks? Just let it go. Be neutral. You're like, I mean, yes, and right? Like that's true. I might say that to a client in a certain scenario of like, why are we caring what they think? But like normalizing the feeling that comes with that, normalizing the tension that builds, normalizing that you're allowed to be a human that has a reaction to something that has happened to you is so valuable. It's everything. So I hope that helps. I've been feeling like I want to talk about this a lot lately because I feel like I've heard from different clients, like different scenarios of kind of being like, oh, I'm not feeling at neutral about this, so I need to change this thing. instead of like recognizing like, oh, I just need to process more here. And again, I think that's the thing that's really hard to slow down and give ourselves permission for. But ultimately, I think it's the thing that typically speeds things way up. Because if we're like, oh, I've felt that feeling before, I've processed through it, wasn't my favorite thing I've ever done, but like I 100% know I have the tools, the skills, the support, whatever. It's like nothing can touch you, right? Deborah says feels bulletproof, right? Um, oh no, you were talking about something else. I think you were talking about like what other people say, and you're like, oh, that seems right, but it's so unstable. But yeah, I think like we can get to a spot where we feel quite bulletproof in our business because we're like, I know I can handle that feeling. I know I can process that. I know I won't burn my fucking business to the ground because of that. I know I won't start limiting all of my clients because of that. I know I won't pull back on social because of that. Like when you can really say all of that is when you can grow, right? When you can't say all of that is when you have shit to process. It's not like you're not neutral enough, although again, kind of. It's you have enough stuff to process so you can get neutral and make that decision. So that is my spiel for today. I hope that is just permission giving. I hope that is a reminder of like what the real work is in business, I think. I just think it's easy to forget that. And we kind of need that reminder to keep coming back to like the real work is letting yourself feel, experience, name, process what is actually happening, and then still be able to take a different action or make a different decision because of it. So hope that helps. I thank you guys so much for being here today. I'm sorry for my slightly late slash brain dead start. But I really appreciate you guys being here. I am going to cut this one a little short because that's really all I had to say about it. And I think you'll get the picture. But anyone that comments where was entered to win that product, any product of mine that you want, I will be back next week. And I thank you guys so much for being here. And I hope you have a lovely Monday. Bye, y'all.